Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a village nestled in the heart of Africa. This village was called Azura, and it was a place of peace and plenty. The villagers lived in harmony with nature, surrounded by lush green forests, sparkling streams, and a lot of fertile lands. The people of Azura were farmers. They worked hard to till the land and grow the food that fed their families. They were good people, with kind hearts and smiling faces. Every morning, the villagers would wake up before dawn to tend to their farm, their tools glittering in the early morning sunrise. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the villagers would gather at the market square to buy and sell their farm products. The village market was a bustling hub of activities, filled with the sound of laughter, chatter, the smell of fresh products and roasted meat. People from neighboring villages would often come to buy the farm products. The villagers would display their goods in colorful manners, from yams, fresh potatoes, fresh tomatoes to plump chickens and fresh fish. One day, an elderly woman came to the village with a big pot of okpa. Her name was Madam Ngozi, and one smile was infectious, drawing villagers near as the tantalizing scent of her okpa filled the air. Some of the villagers rushed to buy from her. As the villagers sampled her okpa, their eyes widened in delight. The okpa was so sweet. With each bite, they were enchanted. Women who were supposed to use their money to buy items for soups, instead they bought okpa and took it home. Their husbands ate it and gave them money to even buy more. Soon, the villagers were all intrigued by the sweet smell of Ngozi's okpa, and they would queue up just to buy it. Every day, the villagers would eagerly await her arrival, their face lighting up with anticipation. They would buy okpa from her and eat it on the spot, savoring the delicious flavors and textures. Everyone loves Madam Ngozi's okpa, and soon people were buying it every day. This became a very big problem. Some will even give her their properties to take as collateral just to get okpa from her, while some will sell their properties for little amount of money and even borrow money to buy okpa from her. The villagers knew something was wrong, but it was as if they were under a spell that they could not break. The scariest thing of all is that nobody knew where Madam Ngozi came from. They all knew she wasn't from the village, and they all assumed she was from the neighboring village. Meanwhile, amidst the okpa craziness, people were falling sick in the village every day. This was very strange because nobody knew where the strange illnesses were coming from. The villagers were often feeling tired, and it was as if their energy was draining every day. It was as if something was trying to suck out the life out of them. Meanwhile, in the neighboring village, Okonkwo, a young man burdened by the loss of his parents, wanted a fresh start. He has heard about the village of Azura and how it has very fertile lands, and Okonkwo was equally a farmer. He has always wanted to relocate to a new village after losing his parents, and since he heard about the village of Azura, he decided to take this opportunity and see it for himself. The day for Okonkwo to travel to the village of Azura came. He put on his clothes, picked up his old bus and journeyed through the bush path to the village. As he walked through the bush path, he heard a faint voice coming from the bushes. Someone was calling for help. Okonkwo, being a kind person, decided to trace the voice and render help. He left the bush path and searched the direction he heard the voice until he came across an old woman that was badly injured. She was lying under a big tree. Okonkwo took pity on the woman and decided to help her. He slowly went close to her and gave her some water to drink from his water bottle. He then looked for some medicinal leaves, rubbed it with his palm and put it on her wound. The old woman seemed very weak, and Okonkwo could not just leave her there. He asked her about where she stays and she pointed to a direction. Okonkwo took her on his back and they both headed towards the direction she pointed. They soon arrived at a small hut in the middle of the forest. Okonkwo wondered why an old woman will be living in the middle of the forest. He went into the hut and lay her down on a bed made of woven grass. After that, he went in search of firewood to make food for her. He made some food for her from the little foodstuff he had with him. Night soon came and Okonkwo decided to pass the night in the hut with the old lady since she didn't look like who was getting better. The next morning, Okonkwo woke up, but to his greatest surprise, the old woman was not in the hut. He rushed out and saw her standing very well, looking very healthy. He was happy that she was now okay and he could finally leave. That afternoon, as he set out to leave, the old woman told him to sit down, that she had few advice for him. At first, she thanked him for saving her life. She told him she was attacked by robbers who beat her up, took her money and left her to die. She told him many persons passed, but he was the only one that offered to help her. So, as such, she cannot let anything happen to him in the village of Azura. Okonkwo was surprised because he did not understand. The old woman's expression turned serious and she said, Okonkwo, I am glad you helped me, but I must warn you about something. There is an evil spirit in the neighboring village and her name is Madam Ngozi. She feeds on human energy. She has been using her okpa to cast a spell on the villagers and draining their energy. Okonkwo eyes widened in shock. But why? He asked. The old woman's eyes clouded with sadness. An evil spirit has no reason to do evil, she said. You must stop her. How? Okonkwo asked, surprised. Madam Ngozi lives in a big tree at the entrance of the village. She cannot be killed, but if that tree is cut down, she will not be able to come into the village again. As Okonkwo listened to the old woman, he was determined to stop Madam Ngozi's evil. He later set out to the village of Azura. On getting there, he noticed the atmosphere was straight. Most of the villagers were looking sick and drained. Later that night, after he had settled, Okonkwo gathered the villagers and told them about Madam Ngozi's spell. To his surprise, they just laughed and mocked him. Madam Ngozi Okpa is the best in the village, one of them said. Why would she cast a spell on us? You that just entered this village today, you are telling us rubbish, another one said. Maybe he doesn't have money to buy, that's why he's badmouthing it, another person added. Everyone made fun of Okonkwo. Okonkwo tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen. Frustrated and defeated, that night Okonkwo went back to the old woman's hut. I failed, Okonkwo said, hanging his head in shame. The villagers don't believe me and they even made mockery of me. The old woman nodded sympathetically. I expected as much. The spell is very powerful and it is hard to resist. But don't worry, I have an idea. She handed Okonkwo a small pouch containing a powder and she said, sprinkle this powder on Madam Ngozi's upper and it will reveal the truth to the villagers. Okonkwo's eyes widened with excitement. Thank you, he exclaimed. The old woman smiled and leaned towards Okonkwo. The key to breaking the spell is to make the villagers believe, and once they do, you must act quickly to free them, she said to Okonkwo. Okonkwo's determination grew. He was ready to face whatever challenges that lay ahead of him and to also free the villagers from Madam Ngozi's spell. He set out for the village again. That night, he called another meeting and told them to be present at where Madam Ngozi sells okpa the next morning. He told them he is going to reveal the truth to them there. A lot of them laughed at him, but they were determined to come the next morning because they wanted to make a mockery of Okonkwo. The next morning, the villagers gathered. They actually gathered to also buy okpa. Okonkwo was also waiting for his turn, his pouch hidden in his pocket. As his turn came, Okonkwo brought out the pouch and sprinkled the powder on the okpa, and immediately all the okpa turned into maggots. The villagers were shocked and filled with fear and disgust. They saw Madam Ngozi for what she is. Immediately Madam Ngozi saw this, she realized she has been exposed. She became very angry. She turned into a terrifying figure, her eyes blazing with fury. "How dare you set my captives free?" she roared. She looked at the villagers and screamed out to them, "I will be back," and vanished into the air. The villagers were shocked and filled with fear. They saw Madame Ngozi, her eyes gleaming with malice as she vanished into thin air. The villagers then realized that they have all been buying and eating maggots. They now understood where all their strange illnesses came from. They realized too late. Okonkwo quickly stepped forward, his voice ringing out, "We must act now so that she would not come back." The villagers began to ask Okonkwo how, and he told them about the big tree at the entrance of the village. He explained to them that if that tree is cut down, Madam Ngozi will never be able to come back. The villagers, now freed from despair, agreed to Okonkwo and rallied behind him. And without hesitation, the villagers, both young and old, marched towards the village entrance, determined to cut down the big Iroko tree at the entrance of the village. Okonkwo led the charge, his machete at the ready. With a collective swing of their machetes, the villagers cut down the big Iroko tree. The trees clashed to the ground, sending shock waves through the forest. As the dust settled, the villagers cheered. They had done it. They had broken Madam Ngozi's spell and she can never return. The village returned back to its peaceful state, and they all thanked Okonkwo and the old woman for liberating them. Okonkwo became a hero in the village and he was given a very big farmland where he can farm. This is the end of the story. I hope you like this story. If you do, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and like this video. You can also share this video to others who might want to listen to this story.